Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of the Geeking Out podcast. I am the Athletic Geek, and joining me again this week for part two is Duke Randall. Gonna bring him back, and last time we talked a lot about wrestling, and we touched on kind of what he's doing now and what he does with his podcast. But this time, I'm just gonna give him the floor to completely talk about what he does with his stuff, and maybe even learn a few things. So, my first question on that front would be: you mentioned last episode that you've had experiences. Tell me about those experiences, and then eventually what led you to do a podcast.
I just started really a couple of years ago. But first of all, thanks for having me back. Um, I've been looking forward to this and everything, so I'm happy to be back. Um,
Awesome, glad to have you back.
it's all started and everything back in 2016, 2017 is whenever I got into the podcasting world and everything. And 2016, I was on my very first podcast that's now a defunct podcast called Mojo Encounters with a man by the name of Bono Russell from out of Chalmette, Louisiana. And I was on there and I told my about my first encounter with cryptid creature that the world known over as Bigfoot. And that's where that all started. And then he kind of walked me through how to start my own podcast. And my first podcast really was just a cell phone conversation that was recorded with a computer and the cell phone set on speaker up by the computer in my office, and it was called Backwoods Investigations. And I went from there. I did, oh gosh, I think I did about 30 episodes over the course of 2 years. I broke them up into seasons and spoke to a lot of cool folks from all walks of life, from Virginia to New Mexico, to from here in Illinois to down into Texas. And you'd be surprised some of these people that are out there that I've never even met before that have experienced some of the same things that I have. And then I took a break from podcasting for a while until I learned how to live stream on YouTube, and I started a episode of episodical podcast called Geek Squatch, which was just three people, me and two of my friends. One who was a black belt in karate, and the other one that was an former Mid South and NWA wrestler named Major Freedom. And we would just go and we talk wrestling, we talk Bigfoot and all kinds of other modern day monsters, and we would go and we'd break down like old Pancrest fights and stuff like that.
Huh.
And then we got kind of canned on that whenever I accidentally went and showed a copyrighted fight from Pancrest, and I got put on a 30-day live stream ban.
Gotta love that.
Oh, I hate that.
Who was the what was the fight?
It was Minoru Suzuki and Ken Shamrock.
That'd be the one they'd go after. Yeah, that would definitely be the one. Is that the one where Suzuki tapped Shamrock out?
I believe so.
Okay.
And so I kind of took time off, and then I would come back in March of the next year with a podcast that ran for about 4 or 5 episodes, and it was called Raw and Uncensored, the voice for the Bigfoot community. And I'd have people come on, and as the name implied of how the podcast was, it was raw and uncensored. There was no censorship. You could say whatever you wanted freely. And it was a place for the voiceless. It was a voice for the voiceless in the Bigfoot community, because I'll just tell you, there's a lot of backdooring and politicking in that whole area.
Okay, it's very interesting you said that. What brings about the politicking and that sort of community? Because that's the first I've ever heard about, and I feel like it's very similar to wrestling in the sense that you tell on somebody who's not as knowledgeable about the wrestling business. There's a lot of politics and a lot of stuff that goes on behind the scenes, they're going to think, well, how is it? How does that work? And it's a foreign concept to them unless they know wrestling. Could you
It's
explain
just
that side of in the Bigfoot community to me?
it just depends on how much you've been on TV and how many years you've been. It's been kind of like in the business, wrestling business. It's just about how much experience you got, what all you've done and everything. Like with me, I've been on PBS. I've been in a documentary that was released this year on DVD.
What
Um,
was the
a,
documentary?
a creature from Big Muddy, an Illinois Bigfoot legend.
I was getting ready to, well, we'll save that for later because I have questions about that, but continue.
And then I was on PBS. I was with a crew from from WSIU that that came out, and I took them out on a night investigation. Me and my brother did, and they aired it on PBS's Alt News 2646, which is a 22 season um, television show that airs on PBS. And then I was front page of the Southern Illinoisan, and I mean, I've been on to date over 3 dozen podcasts,
Including this one?
including this one.
Woo! We're included.
I've been on some big name podcasts like Dogman Encounters Radio, Bigfoot Eyewitness Radio, Night Callers Bigfoot Radio, which is a big one that's based out of Oklahoma and Texas area. I've been on Bigfoot Zone Radio, Squatch Talk Radio, um, a lot of radio shows I've been on. What was the one? Porch Talk, American Myths and Legends. I've been on Sit Down with Ed Brown, and Ed Brown is a big name in the Bigfoot community because he travels coast to coast, border to border, year round doing this stuff.
So it seems like for someone like me who's a little uneducated on something like this, the Bigfoot community is again very similar to the wrestling community where it's got a really big online presence. Uh what got you into Bigfoot? What was your first experience with Bigfoot? What made this something that you have been able to take to all these different podcasts and platforms?
Well, it all happened back in August of 2004, whenever I was 9 years old, whenever I had my first experience with one.
You feel comfortable talking about that experience?
Oh, 100%. I'll tell you anything you want to know. I mean, I've had a handful of experiences with them and other creatures. Um, uh, Dogman, it's kind of like a werewolf. I've had experiences with them. I actually had an encounter with Mothman one time. Um, and I've actually had a couple paranormal encounters. So I consider myself to be pretty dang lucky. Uh, Aside from other people, because people can go their whole lives without having an experience from any of these creatures. And, I consider myself very lucky. But I was about 9 years old when this happened back in 2004. It was in rural Randolph County, Illinois, outside of the little town of Redbud. And me and my dad had come back from a Cardinals baseball game that night, and it was probably about maybe midnight, 1 o'clock. And we're in the garage. We was living with my grandfather at the time, and we had this little garage that was built onto the house, so we had to go in the back door to get into the house through the garage. And right as my dad put the key in the lock to the door of the house, the coyotes outside lit up out in the cornfield, which is probably about maybe 50 yards behind the house. And then amongst the coyotes, it just something just come out of there that sounded like just this big guttural howl, this long wailing howl that come from the cornfield. And 9 years old, I remember it like it happened last night, and it was had so much power, and you could feel the reverberation in your chest from the power from this thing. And it had so much power, it was rattling the windows sitting in the panes on the garage.
Oh wow.
And 9 years old, I about jerked the door off the hinge trying to get in the house.
Did you get a good look, or was it just the
It
noise?
was it was just the noise, but I didn't know what it was that I had heard until 10 years later. And of course, at the time, I had discovered the Wendigo through the animated Incredible Hulk television show.
Okay. Yes. Yes.
And it, whenever I heard that howl, I thought it could have been a Wendigo. And then about 10 years later, 9, 10 years later, I'm just surfing through the web and I find this recording from 1994 that was recorded in Ohio by Matt Moneymaker, the BFRO. And for those that don't know who Matt Moneymaker is, he is the lead investigator for the BFRO on finding Bigfoot. And so I listened to this recording and I played it
BFRO.
again.
What is the BFRO?
Bigfoot Field Researchers Organization. It was founded back in 1995.
Okay.
And
Gotcha.
it's one of the only Bigfoot Field Researchers Organization that has actually got scientific backing to it.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Okay.
And they go out and I mean they go and they travel all over the world. They've done work in the UK and Australia, and they have people in all 50 states. So they're one of the biggest researching organizations today. But I played that recording, and it was recorded. It was titled "The Ohio Moaning Call." Back in 1994, Matt Moneymaker recorded it in Ohio, and I called my dad in the room, and I played it back for him, and I said, "Listen to this," and his eyes got real big, and I said, "You know what that sounds like?" He goes, "It sounds familiar," and I said, "Dad, that's what we heard 10 years ago." And it started off as a mission to find closure in what I had heard that night whenever I was 9 years old, and it turned into an obsession to prove, that these creatures do exist in Southern Illinois and around the world.
Interesting. So, okay, that was your first experience with Bigfoot. You said you've experienced other creatures. Tell me about those.
Okay. Um, Back in on July 4th of 2017, me and my brother had an encounter with a dog man. And if anybody, for those that doesn't know what a dog man is, a dog man is basically a werewolf minus the transformation on a full moon. These things stay that way all the time. There's no transformation. There are the kinds out there that actually that do transform, but those are like the Rougarou and the lycanthropes. Those go and usually result in a curse of some kind. But with the dog man, they are a regular creature that
Now, now,
go
now
and
the ones that transform, are they like human transforms like we see in the movies, or is it more like just transform from one animal to the other?
oh, it's exactly like it is in the movies. That usually it's by bite or curse. It's most likely from a curse. Like with the Rougarou of Louisiana Cajun folklore. The Rougarou is of a curse of uh, it's a curse that lasts 101 days. That's usually performed by a voodoo priest or priestess on somebody. And the thing is, a Rougarou could be anybody. It could be your brother. It could be your sister, your uncle. It could be your neighbor. You never know who it's going to be. But the thing with it is the legend. There's two ways that someone could become a Rougarou: is not observing Lent for 7 years in a row fully, or being cursed by hoodoo and voodoo.
Okay. So what was that experience like?
Well, what happened was I'll start from the beginning. Every year on 4th of July, my grandparents and my mother and me, we always have a big potluck at my grandparents' house, and we'll have fireworks display, and we invite folks from all over out here, our neighbors and our family, to come and watch. And my next door neighbors, who had just moved down from Wisconsin, had these two boys, and the boys wanted to go and walk home. And they lived probably maybe about a good half mile, 3/4 of a mile walk from the house. And the husband and wife uh, wanted the boys to come home, and I said, "You guys go on home. You guys got to work in the morning. Me and Josh, my brother, will walk them home." So we're walking back up the road and everything, and about that time we was having a lot of snake problems and everything. So I stopped off here at the house to get a 22 rifle, and we're walking home, and somebody about ran us over on the main road. Don't know if they was drinking or not, but we got the boys home, and I asked my brother. I said, "Well, how you wanting to go home?" And he goes, "I'm not getting back on the main road after that idiot almost ran us over." And I said, "Well, let's go ahead and let's just cut across the field and up through the woods that come up behind our house, because it's a straight shot from where I'm sitting right now here in my driveway. I could see my neighbor's house of where we was at." And so we cut across this field, and it dips down into a little valley in between where our properties are. And there is a creek that runs through it that has cattails growing up pretty high in it, with a little bit of trees along either side of the creek. And we got down to the creek, and I told him, I said, "Here's where we turn left here to go down along the creek, and then it'll open up to where we can cross the creek and come up through the woods behind the house." And we started walking and everything, and I'm starting to hear this little bit of splashing in the water in the creek. And I stopped, and I looked at my brother and said, "You throwing rocks?" He goes, "No." So we kept going, and we could hear it again, and I heard a splash again. And I said, "Josh, quit throwing rocks. You're creeping me out." He goes, "Zach, I'm not throwing rocks." And I told him, just whatever you're doing, knock it off. He still swore up and down he was not throwing rocks into the water. And then I heard the cane reeds rattle like something was moving through them. And I stopped him, and I said, "Josh, you hearing that?" He goes, "Yeah, but it's not me. I'm not throwing rocks." And I said, "You got your flashlight?" And he goes, "Yeah." And he handed me his phone, and I kicked his flashlight on, and I started scanning into the caneries and the cattails, um, seeing if I could see anything. I was hoping it could have been maybe a raccoon or possum, but then I was up at the top of the beam of the light. I could see a reflection of two amber-colored eyes looking right at me, about eye level with me, and I'm almost 6 feet tall.
Right. Dang.
And those eyes looking directly at us. Well, I reached out, and my little brother, who was, he was probably like maybe uh, 15, 16 at the time, and I was about 22, 23. And I reached out and I grabbed him because he was standing in front of me on my right. And I reached out with my right hand, and I put it on his chest, and I pulled him back behind me. And I said, stay behind me. Keep this me between you and the cattails. Let's turn around. Let's walk back to the main road. And we started walking back to the main road. And right as I said, let's start walking back to the main road, those eyes blinked.
Dang.
And I said, "Let's go." And so we're walking, and I'm looking behind us, and it was a full moon that night. And I'm looking up at the tops of where the cattails are, and you could see them parting and opening up at the top, like something big was walking. I'm not talking like no 6 inches. I'm talking about maybe like 3, 4, 5 feet in width across the top. And this thing was going, and I could hear it panting. And I told him, I said, "Let's go. Let's pick up the pace a little bit." And this thing kept pace with us, and then I saw the road, and I said, "Come on, let's go haul ass." And we took off running and everything, and I'm grabbing him by his arm and pushing him up in front of me, and I'm holding him out in front of me. And I look back, and I could see, in the moonlight, I could see the silhouette of a hand reach out from the cattails. And the cattails open up, and you could see something that what looked like a man, but had the head of a wolf, stumble and fall over and roll as it was trying to come uphill out of the creek, because there was a pretty steep bank where we was at that point. And you could hear it running behind us. And we got back on the main road and we ran uphill for about a quarter mile, going up at an incline. And we crossed this dusk to dawn light that was out in front of our neighbor's house. And as soon as we got to the other side of that light, that's when that thing stopped, and it wouldn't cross into that beam of light. It stayed right at the edge of the beam of light opposite of us. And whenever I got a good look at this thing, and it stood approximately 8 feet tall, with black shaggy hair, had the crooked legs on it like a dog does, but it had arms and hands like a human would, but it had a wolf's head. And all you could see in the dark outside of all of that was those eyes glowing from the light, those amber colored eyes. And we kept going. That thing stopped there at the edge of that light after we crossed through the beam of the light, and it turned around and walked away.
Do do they remember they became werewolves, or do you know, like, from your research, do they remember it, the people that get this curse, or are they just kind of like one of those out of body experiences sort of deals?
Yes. Some of them, though, if it's a curse, some of them, uh, according to folklore, that they won't know it. They'll basically black out, and then it's the primal animal spirit inside them that takes over. And it's basically they're riding shotgun catatonic state mentally, while it's this primal spirit that's taking over.
Okay. So you mentioned you had a final experience with another creature. Tell us about that one.
Okay, this one was with the Mothman, and
What is
if
the
any,
Mothman? This is one I've never actually heard of.
here the Mothman actually happened, um, right outside of Harrisburg, Illinois, and this was back in 2016, right around Christmas. Um, I was laying in bed one night, and I got a call from my girlfriend at the time, and she said, "Let's go to town. We need to get Elf on a Shelf." And this is about 3 o'clock in the morning, and I'm like, "I don't, okay." So I throw my clothes on and I get ready. She's coming to pick me up, and we're going down this stretch of road, because she always liked to take back roads wherever she was going. She never liked getting out on the main road. So we're going down the stretch of back road before we have to literally get on the main road to get to Harrisburg. And I go, and we're just driving, we're tooling down this road and everything, because the road's a little slick because it's close to Christmas and everything, and we had a little bit of ice on the road. So we're taking it slow. And it was a little bit, it was probably about a quarter moon that night, latter stages of the moon, where the moon's going to be up a little bit later and higher in the sky late at night. And when we passed this open field off the side of the road, about maybe 30 yards out in this field, and I thought it was a man standing out in this field that had like a big jacket on. And I said, "Honey, stop the car." And I got out of the car, and I went and I said, "Sir, are you okay?" I thought it could have been somebody that was out, high tripping balls on some kind of drug or drunk.
Right.
And I was just going to check on him, see if he was okay. And I'm like, "Sir, are you okay? Do I need to call somebody?" And, he didn't say nothing, just stood there, had his back to me. And I told her, I said, "You need to get on the phone, call somebody. I think we may have a problem." I said, "This guy could be drunk. He could be lost. It could be some old man out here that's lost and can't remember his way home, because we do have Alzheimer's patients out here."
Right.
And I said, "Get on the phone and try to get a hold of somebody." I said, "Sir, are you okay? Do you need help?" And about that time, what I thought was the big coat turned out to be wings, and the wings opened up. And then this big flash of red flashed from this thing's head, and it was like getting flash burned by an arc welder. And if anybody that's ever been flash burned by an arc welder, it's pretty painful on your eyes and everything. It literally will burn your eyes. I covered my eyes right as it happened and everything, and I couldn't see. But then I heard a big boom, and whenever I got my sight back, about a minute later, this thing was gone. And I looked around trying to go and see if I could see any kind of tracks because it was frost on the ground that night. And I looked around in the frost to see if I could see if there's any disturbance in the grass, and there was no tracks leading the way. It was just like this, all the grass for about a 8 to 10 uh, foot radius was broke down in a circle, like something had used like some kind of propulsion to take off. And I think that's what that flume was it flapping its wings to take off, and it matted down the grass whenever it took off from the gust of wind the wings generated.
So what can you tell me about like the history of this, this creature, the lore behind it?
The Mothman was first reported back in November of 1966, I believe, in Point Pleasant, West Virginia. And they actually wrote a book and made a movie about it called The Mothman Prophecies by John Keel. And Richard Gere was in the Mothman Prophecies. This thing was sighted for 13 months in Point Pleasant, West Virginia. And a lot of people saw it. This thing was being seen on top of buildings, chasing cars. It was blamed to be the reason that a lot of domesticated pets was disappearing. Um, this thing was just eerie. And then right before Christmas in 1967, um, this thing was sighted one last time, and then the Silver Bridge collapsed that crosses the Ohio River in West Virginia, and over 40 people died that night.
Hmm. Um. Wow, this one I've never actually. I'm not gonna say I'm all big on the folklore, but like this is one I completely like never ever heard of.
And this thing has not just been sighted; it didn't just stop there. This thing was seen before the Chernobyl accident with the meltdown in Ukraine. This thing was seen the day of 9/11, flying around the towers before the towers went down, before even the planes hit. This thing was actually seen even before the leap day tornado that hit Harrisburg, Illinois, a couple years ago.
Okay.
It was seen literal months, like 3 or 4 months before the tornado hit Harrisburg. And then just as recently as a month ago, it was seen at flying around Chicago O'Hare Airport.
So the belief about this creature is that it causes tragedy.
It that Some people see it as a bad omen, a harbinger of doom. There's a lot of theories on what this creature could be. Um, some people think that it could be something of extraterrestrial origin. Um, some people think that it could be a military experiment that went wrong and it escaped. And some believe it could be the spirit of Chief Cornstalk, who was a Shawnee chief, who was double crossed and killed. And with his dying breath, he cursed the land, saying that he would get his revenge.
Okay. Um. So one of the things I cover on this channel is comic books, and very recently, local comic book store, very appropriately named, you know, Big Muddy Monster Comics, created their own comic book related to the Big Muddy Monster out of Murfreesboro, Illinois. It's a great book. I'll leave a link to go purchase that book in the description below. But what can you tell me about that particular monster that's, a local comic shop decided to make a book about?
I can tell you a whole lot about the Big Muddy Monster. Actually, with my cryptozoology research team, the Southern Illinois Monster Hunters, we were established back in 2015. One of my team members has actually had an encounter with the Big Muddy Monster back whenever he was 10. And a Big Muddy Monster stems back long before the 70s even happened. This thing was reported for about 150 years in the Jackson County area um, as a whole. This big, 7, 8 foot tall, about 300-400 pound white thing that with mud matted hair that was seen hanging around Big Muddy River. This thing had terrorized the area for over 150 years. It was responsible for cattle and livestock attacks. This thing menacing people, and then it started gaining notoriety back in the 70s. Whenever it was first officially reported um, and documented at Riverside Park back in 1973, and this thing uh, quote unquote attacked this couple at Lover's Lane down by the boat launch at Riverside Park. And these two were the two people that was in the car were having an affair on their spouses, and they were well-respected members of the community in Murfreesboro. And they said they heard this wail come up, this scream come up out of the woods down by the river, and then this smell hit the car. They said it smelled like dead dog uh, uh, that had been sprayed by a skunk. And then they said this thing came up and would come up close to their car and was looking in the driver's side window of their car. Well, they sped to the police station. These are two well-respected members of the community, and they're going to the police station while they're out having an affair on their spouses.
Right.
And so something had to have happened that scared them that much that they're willing to risk both their careers and their marriages.
Right. Yeah.
Because if anybody that's been through Murfreesboro is a small town.
Yeah. There's takes a lot of effort to hide something, and you definitely don't go to the cops.
Exactly. And they reported, and the cops, the deputies went down there and actually um, investigated this thing. They actually got photographs of where this thing had left tracks in the mud, but the mud had already collapsed on the tracks. So all you could see was little divots in the mud where this thing had left its tracks. And this thing was apparently still down there because it let out a scream, and the deputy dropped his service revolver and ran back to the car, locked the door, and wouldn't get out and go get his gun. They left. And then they called a retired police officer from the Carbondale Police Department that raised and trained canine units for police departments all over Southern Illinois, and they brought out a German Shepherd tracking dog, and they tracked this thing up to this old barn outside of Murfreesboro. And the dog wouldn't even go in the barn. The guy literally had to push the dog in the barn, and the dog come out fighting, trying to get away with his tail tucked. He did not want no part of this thing. And then there was a man who's a lawyer now in DuQuoin, that had an encounter with it when he was about 3 or 4 years old, and he was out in his backyard trying to catch fireflies. He still, even when he was 3 years old, and he's in his 50s now, he still remembers it to this day. He was out there in his backyard. He said trying to catch fireflies in a jar, and he saw this big white thing. He said inside the tree line, looking at him while he was in his backyard out behind his house, inside the city limits of Murfreesboro, and all he could think was "Mama." And he ran in the house, and he told his mom there's a monster in the backyard, and she just thought that he just had an overactive imagination.
Right.
Well, the neighbor called and asked her if they had seen anything weird in the last 20-30 minutes. Well, come to find out that next door, literally next door, um, the the neighbor's son and his girlfriend were sitting out on the back porch in the swing and saw the same thing that little boy saw not 10 minutes before.
Wow. Um, so I know in the book there's a lot of different police reports about the big muddy monster. It actually went off of the original police reports. So, um,
Yeah, they ended up at the Murfreesboro Police Department. They ended up releasing the file for public access. And the file, I've actually seen the file, and it is about as thick as a 500-page book.
um, what what have you and your club, with it still being so prevalent and being such a big deal, well-known deal compared to some of your other experiences that you've had in the area, what sort of I don't know if research or investigations, I don't know what's the right word to use, but what sort of things has your group done in regards to the big muddy monster as far as trying to track it, find it, learn more about it?
Well, that's the thing, though. We don't go and just settle on one thing. We take in all kinds of reports. We'll take in UFO, cryptid creature, paranormal. Um,
Right.
we'll go and we take everything from anywhere that we can get. And we actually just got recently a report from outside of Hearst over on Elkville Blacktop. This girl was driving home from work one night, and she's ex-military, and she was driving on Elkville Blacktop, and this big white canine creature across the blacktop in front of her, and she said this thing was so long it almost took up 2 lanes of traffic, going both on the north to south lane, and so it almost stretched all the way completely across the road. And we got reports from people that have seen Dogman, people that have seen Bigfoot, people that have seen UFOs, and we don't solely focus on anything. We'll take any kind of report we can get and we'll investigate it. But with my team, we're pretty much like a consultation team. I mean, we go, what we're trying to do, we're not trying to get rich off of this. I'll just put that out there. We're not trying to get rich off of this.
Right.
We are out there trying to help people with what they're seeing, because for a lot of people that have actually had encounters like this, there's a couple on my team that has, and there's a lot of them on my team that has, and they're still skeptical. But we try to go and help those people understand what it is they're seeing, because we've been through it and we've been in their shoes before.
Right.
There's a lot of people that have experienced these things that won't talk about them for 50, 60 years, pretty much till they're on their deathbed,
Right.
because they don't want the criticism and they don't want people thinking they're crazy. That's the thing. We are not judgmental. We will take a person at their word of what they're seeing, and we'll try to help them understand what it is they're seeing, and we'll go and try to rule it out as misidentification, or if it was something like of a known animal that made a certain sound that they heard. Um, we'll go and we'll run all kinds of field tests on them. Like, we'll put a loudspeaker out there and start blasting random animal sounds, trying to go and um, place what it was that they experienced and that they heard. You
Right.
know, we try to go and actually rule out what's possible before we even say it could have been something else.
So you don't just there's the stereotype that people have about monster hunters of like they think every little thing like, oh, that was Bigfoot, oh, that was whatever. So your group is quite the contrary, to where the first thing you want to see is, hey, was it a wolf? Was it a fox? Was it
Exactly.
something else? And try and find that out first before you go, okay, well, we might have a situation on our hands.
Exactly. And that's the thing too. There's a lot of people that will have Bigfoot on the brain, and they want to go and hope and believe it's Bigfoot, and then they'll psychosomatically go and say it was Bigfoot because they got Bigfoot on the brain, wherever it could have been something else. And then you got these attention seekers out there that'll go and try to claim someone else's work, or try to say that this picture that's been circulated and recycled as a report in like 12 different states saying that it's theirs. And, I've had it happen before where I went and I called them on it. And they was trying to say that this picture was taken in Georgia 3 weeks prior to them going and uploading it and saying it was theirs. And I'd seen this picture get recycled by like 6 or 8 different people. And I called them on it and I said, this thing is a plywood cutout silhouette of a profile of a Bigfoot that a friend of mine in Minnesota has, that they set up on their the straightaway along these power lines just for show. And they try and argue with me. I'm like, no, that is a plywood cutout. I know because I have one just like that in my garage. His name is Mojo, and I take him to my lecture so that way the kids can have their picture with him. And they get all bent out of shape and everything. And next thing you know, it's the personal insults and everything. And I just told him, I said, I'm not drink. I said, piss in a jar and call it Granny's peach tea. I'm not drinking your shit.
Right.
And he told me to go to hell, and I said I would, but the devil's got a restraining order on me.
um. So you go. You've mentioned all the lectures you've gone on. You do lectures not just in Southern Illinois, but all over the country. Um. Have you ever? I know the concept of this is something that it's not easy for a lot of people to accept, and just being real with you, I've never had an experience, so I don't know if I can really comment on it, but I'm not sure about all this still. Call me, if this were religion, call me an agnostic. But how do you deal with people who maybe not quite in a respectful manner um, don't necessarily believe in the creatures? How do you deal with them? And have you converted anybody? Have you had good conversations with a non-believer? Take me through all that from your travels.
Well, I do deal with that a lot, and I mean I've done lectures where it was just enthusiasts, skeptics, very few eyewitnesses in the audience, and like just this past week on the 2nd of October. I did the Shawnee Sasquatch Festival in Harrisburg, Illinois, and I did it at the City Hall. And there was a lot of people there that just had an interest in the subject. They never had an encounter. And then some people, that just come to troll a
Right.
lecture whenever we have our Q&As after our lecture, like we always do. You just be nice to them, kill them with kindness. I'm not out there to go and convince these people uh, whenever I give my lecture because I'm a historian. I love history. I like to go and educate people on history of our area, the lesser known history, the dark history. And, whenever I'm giving my lecture, that's what I'm there to do. I am there to present what it is that I found that I see as evidence to prove that there's something out here in the woods that's still undiscovered. And in cryptozoology, let me explain this. Cryptozoology is a pseudoscience, and it's the study of creatures not yet recognized by science. Um, and that's where the term cryptid is derived from. Bigfoot, Loch Ness Monster, the Yeti, um, Chupacabra, those all fall in the cryptid category. But here's another thing: the lowland gorilla, the giant squid, the platypus, the giant panda. Though they all were classed in the cryptid category and with until the last 200 to 100 years.
Okay, I didn't know that. So
The giant squid up until 2006 was record was re, re, I'll get my word out, was just recalled as drunk sailor tales of this giant sea monster that could pull apart and attack, that was attacking ships and pulling them apart. They was all classed as drunk sailor tales until a man caught one in his net, back in 2006 off the coast of Antarctica. The lowland gorilla of Africa. That was just seen as folklore of giant ape men until someone actually shot one and brought it back to civilization. And then it transferred from the realm of cryptozoology to zoology. The same thing with the platypus. They all, who's going to believe that there's a beaver out there with a duck bill on it? That's going to be seen as, just folklore until someone actually shot and killed one and brought one in and they actually had a body to prove it. With the giant panda bear, they thought it was just something of Chinese folklore until someone actually brought the hide of one and it actually tested authentic. And it turned out to be something of the bear family. That's what I go and I throw at them. And also with the Lazarus effect, with the coelacanth. The coelacanth, we've actually got fossil records of from millions of years ago. And they was saying that it was something extinct until someone actually caught one off of the coast of Africa in 1937. And that they are still seen today. The Thylacine, the Tasmanian tiger, it was
That's one I've
last.
actually heard of because I remember it's believed to be extinct, but I know that there's been sightings about the Tasmanian tiger. That's one I actually do remember.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That thing was classified as extinct back in 1927 when the last one died in captivity. Yet within the last 10 years, there's actually been photographs and video that have been proven to be authentic that these things are still out in the wilds of New Zealand, Australia, and Tasmania. That's what I tell everybody. All of these creatures were either uh, drunk sailor tales and folklore or extinct, until we actually caught one of them, whether it be on camera or had a body. Don't be so quick to rule something like this out because we're discovering new flora and fauna every single day.
Right.
And it's just like another one that was recently discovered here within the last 10 years, the bonobo, the billy ape, the lion killer. It's kind of like a chimpanzee on steroids. It's the chimpanzee's bigger cousin and a gorilla's smaller cousin. These things are jacked. These things are out there, and these things are not sleeping in trees in Africa. They're sleeping on the ground, and they're fighting lions, and they're killing them. That's another type of primate that was just discovered here within the last 10, 15 years.
Okay. Um, One, and this is just like this is a question from uh an open-minded but uneducated skeptic. So we've there's so many groups out there now, like you're part of, and there was TV shows about finding Bigfoot, all these different things. All of the media of monster hunting that I have seen, everybody seems to have kind of an aversion to killing the monster. And you just mentioned, uh, a bit ago about the platypus. Nobody believed in it until someone killed it and brought in the actual carcass of it, saying here it is, it's real. Why are so many of the monster hunters seem to be that I've gathered? There seems to be this aversion to trying to kill Bigfoot. What is the hold up there, or is that just kind of from what I've seen on media, and that's completely different from other monster hunting groups out there?
Well, it's just, we are not pro kill. We're pro self defense though. We will not draw because when we go out in the woods, we are armed. I carry a 20 gauge shotgun. Um, my cousin Ben, he goes and he carries a 12 gauge. Um, some of us carry 350 magnums. Something with a little bit of firepower because if we're out there and we're hunting a certain creature and it decides to turn on us, we're going to defend ourselves.
Right.
You know, that's the only time we'll ever pull and fire on a creature. But we're all about proving these things exist so that way we can protect them. You know, but the sad thing is the only way that we're going to prove that they exist is just like how they did with the giant squid, the platypus, the giant panda, the lowland gorilla. Is we're going to need a body to go and run diagnostic testing on. And, you know, hopefully, if we can keep the subject alive and not have to take it by force, we can tranquilize it and or trap it, and we can get all kinds of DNA diagnostics on it. So that way we can put it in our database and then release it back into the wild. And then we can find a way to go and actually start protecting these things because, you know, we don't have anything in our DNA database that would resemble a Bigfoot. I could go out right now and I could go and say I did, and I plucked a fresh handful of hair out of a Bigfoot's back, and I took it to a DNA diagnostics lab. They won't be able to tell me what it is, but they'll be able to tell me what it isn't, and it'll show up unknown. It's because, you know, we don't know where this thing came from. We don't have a body to actually say it came from. We don't have a way of classing it. We don't have a way of, you know, booking the DNA. You know, it's going to take to the point, you know, that scientists need something that they can put their hands on.
Okay. Uh, would you say that is the ultimate goal, at least in terms of the Southern Illinois Monsters? Is that the ultimate goal? If one day they could just, you know, capture a creature to be studied, would that be like the ultimate goal?
That would be the ultimate goal, and then the real next adventure begins because, you got all these biologists and these zoologists and these scientists that you know are going to be going out and basically trying to be Jane Goodall and be up against these creatures and monitor their habits. It's like I was telling a guy a couple years ago that I used to work with. He said, well, if they do discover Bigfoot, they won't need you after that. And I said, au contraire. And I give him this uh, analogy. I said, you wouldn't take a gynecologist and tell him to go build you a nuclear bomb, would you? I said, you're not going to have these nerdish people that have never been out of a lab in their life to go and off the concrete to go out into the woods out of their element to go and study these creatures up close in the wild. They're going to need guides. They're going to need people that know the lay of the land. Someone that's going to be able to get them in and out in one piece. They're going to contact us, people that have actually seen these things long before these things were actually officially discovered. As an example, I'm using this. And long before these things were proven to exist as a scenario, they're going to need us to go in there and help them, get up close, monitor these things, take notes, get audio, video of these things to actually start putting into where we can actually start doing conservation with these things.
Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Um, so yeah, I'm really glad to have you back on here. I'm glad I've learned a little bit more about everything that you guys do in your work. Because just being real, this isn't necessarily my realm of the nerd sphere. Compared to comic books and anime and wrestling. But I really appreciate you taking the time again to do this. I appreciate you explaining things to me in a way that was not like some other folks I've met that are a little bit more condescending about this sort of thing. And I wish you the best of luck in the future. I hope you can get your message out there, and I definitely have a. I'm not going to say that I completely believe in everything, but I definitely have a new perspective, and I appreciate you giving that to me.
Well, I will say this. I was in your shoes 16 years ago. I did not go, and even 10 years ago, I was in your shoes. I did not go and put stock in these things, that this thing exists. Um, Heck, even up until 2016, I did not even put stock that these things exist until I actually saw one. Once you see one, it changes your whole outlook on life. It turns your little world upside down to where you realize that it ain't just us and the known animals on this rock. You know, there is something else out there that still defies explanation, and um, it's just like it changes your whole world and it changes your thinking on everything. It makes you question everything, and I know a lot of people that say, I don't believe. Well, me and my cousin Ben, my team member Gail, we all have had encounters with these things. Uh, Another team member of mine, Alton, he actually encountered one and he was within 20 yards of one and he got a detailed look at it. It changes your life sometimes for the better and sometimes for the worse, because I've actually met people and spoke to people and heard their encounters and their testimonies of these things, and it's actually traumatized them to the point where they won't even go in the woods
Right.
anymore, and they've actually broke down into tears crying because they were so traumatized by this thing, or whatever they saw. It changes your life. It just depends on if it's for the better or for the good.
Right. Um, and I definitely appreciate you, telling us your stories. Would you like to, for anybody who would like to learn more and learn about this in a positive way, tell us more about where they can look you up and look up uh, anything that your team has done?
Oh yeah, for sure. Be sure to, yeah, you can go ahead and you can find us on Facebook, Southern Illinois Monster Hunters. You can find us on YouTube under the same name, Southern Illinois Monster Hunters. You can listen to our podcast, Wrestling with Monsters, on Spotify. Um, it's the show for wrestlers, wrestling fans, and cryptid enthusiasts alike. We talk about a little bit of everything from wrestling to uh, the paranormal realm, the spiritual realm, the cryptozoology realm. We do it all. We got our show on YouTube, Mysterious Illinois, where we actually have gone out and done night investigations. And there's actually been some where there's some of my old field videos that I've done, detailing my encounters that I've had in the past, because there's been more than just what we've shared on the show today. But there's been some, that have scared me out of the woods for months, that's happened here in recent years. And you can see all that for yourself. um, it's just that's all of us, right there in a nutshell. We are the Southern Illinois Monster Hunters, established in 2015. We're out there to put a name on the nameless and to explain the unexplainable. And as I tell everybody, there are things that go bump in the night, but we're the people that bump back.
And yeah, definitely check them out if you're interested in the paranormal. And thanks again to Duke for coming back on here. I know really wanted to get this one in because you recently got some good news.
Yeah, I did. I get to go back to work here this week. Um, Last time I was on, I've been off for about 2 months now. Been having some health issues and everything. We're not out of the woods yet. I still got a little bit more to go. The doctors did find a little bit more wrong with me, with my health, but I'm able to go back to work, and um, I'm still fighting the good fight. I still got a long way to go, but I'm not giving up. I'm not tapping out on this one. I will kick at it too.
All right. Well, we hope you definitely do hope you kick out at two, and congratulations on getting to go back to work. And even still, there's still probably a lot more stuff we could cover eventually on this podcast, schedule permitting. But I'm glad we were able to get this one in. Um, Thank you, Duke, for being back on here. And if you enjoyed, definitely check his stuff out. And if you enjoyed, check out the rest of my stuff. I got content from this is kind of my first experience in this, but I do have content based in pro wrestling, gaming, anime, comic books, all things geek culture. I'm on social media, facebook.com/athleticgeek89, Twitter, athletic_geek89, easy for me to say, Instagram, athleticgeek89, and if you'd like to help improve my channel financially, I am on Patreon, patreon.com/athleticgeek89. Check out the Southern Illinois Monster Hunters, check out Duke Randall, and we'll see you next time.